Hello, I'm Deborah Malone, founder of The Internationalist and host of Internationalist Marketing TV. Today's guest is Nils Persson, Chief Marketing Officer of Visit Sweden. Nils, what a pleasure to see you. I am delighted to congratulate you on being one of our Internationalists of the Year. And I know we're going to have a very intriguing conversation about Visit Sweden. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Deborah. It's an honor to be here.
Well, it's an honor for me, and let's start with something that I'm sure a lot of people are curious about. Visit Sweden has become known for its bold, unconventional, and award-winning campaigns. So I guess the big question is how do you balance the need to stand out creatively with the responsibility of representing a national brand?
Yeah, a very good question. In a way, I would say it's a balancing act, but we have done this for quite some years. It's my second time at Visit Sweden, so I've been here for 5 years now this time. And we sort of reshaped the marketing that we do and how we do it and how we do the brand building. And it's a lot about the target group to identify what do the target group, what resonates with the target group, but then also what do we have to offer as a country? Who are we, Swedes? Some sort of Swedishness. So we try to be authentic in everything we do, but also to mix that up with some sort of humor or maybe in sometimes we have worked with horror, but building a story that sort of resonates with people. So it's also taking into account sort of insights what's going on in the cultural world today and how can we sort of deliver on that. We have talked about, we used internal terms like infotainment, or we want to build a story that sort of resonates with people and do something more. Because honestly, I think destination marketing in general, I think has been quite boring. It's such a fantastic thing to talk about. Destination, it's vacation, something that you find where you go and relax and do something that sort of breaks the normal day when you go traveling with friends or with family or alone. So why don't you sort of advertising or branding that sort of helps people to get something out of the vacation? It's where you start your vacation sometimes. So I think that is something that sort of destination marketers in general, I think, do quite poorly. So that was something that we sort of set out. We need to be a bit more bolder, and we also need to do something that we can sort of stand for and be authentic, but do it sort of with a Swedish twist, as we say. Dry Swedish humor is something that we've used as internal terms.
Well, that's very interesting. And you said something that you are trying to convey Swedishness. And
Yeah,
you've mentioned humor. And I would think that there's a lot of people around the world, when they think of Sweden, I'm not sure what comes to mind, maybe with the exception of a big brand or two. But
yeah,
I'm not sure that they understand that much about place or the people or how you actually convey that Swedishness. Do you
yeah.
mind just telling us, as a Swede, what Swedishness means and how the rest of the world might perceive it?
Yeah, it's really hard sort of inside out to talk about that because I don't know how others perceive us. But I think in a way I think we're quite sort of we're quite sort of, I can't find the words, but we're quite um, reserved in the way we are. We don't we have something called jantelagen. You shouldn't brag too much. But then we're also quite open. We're quite progressive in many ways in Sweden. So I think it's a mix of a lot of different things. We are not the ones that maybe you can see and hear most about when you're out somewhere, because we're quite reserved in how we are, at least in the beginning. And I think we have sort of long cold winters, dark, and then we have the bright summer where the sun never sets. I think that's do something with the Swedish soul, and then we're out in the nature quite a lot as well. So I think that sort of all of that has sort of sparked. We're quite big country. I think we're the third biggest country in Europe, or in EU at least, but we are not so high population. So there's a lot of space also in Sweden. So I think all of that mixed together with sort of driving creativity and everything, and that is something that sort of reflects who we are. We are quite creative, I would say, in general, in many ways. So I think that's, but we are not. We're quite reserved as and as people
Well,
in general.
I'm still going to ask you to brag a little bit about some of your campaigns, but you did mention a couple of things,
Yeah,
and that aspect of nature, and I think sustainability, yeah, and I think that is certainly one of the attractions
yeah,
for people, and that sense of quiet, that sense of going somewhere that might for them feel remote because it is not as populated, and there is such great natural beauty, particularly in many places being by the water.
yeah,
It is quite extraordinary. Now let's transition that. It's so interesting to me that you talk about the initial reserved character of most Swedes. And yet the boldness that you have with the creativity. So what I'd love to do is just because you talk about destination marketing being
yeah,
boring. Some of the examples that you have done, some of the work that you have done, just just breaks the mold. Never mind in destination marketing, but anything, whether it is the Swedish number or Spellbound by Sweden, or just tell us about some of those campaigns, including whether some of the old ones that set the scene,
mm,
as well as some of the new things that you're working on.
yeah, absolutely. Uh, and yeah, what should I say? We have done quite a few campaigns I would say over the last maybe 7, 8 years, or up to 10 years, but especially I would say the last 4, 5 years now we have done some pretty good campaigns. And one of the measurements that I wanted to have as well was sort of going out of the sort of boundaries of destination market, because we're not competing with other destinations, especially not when it comes to sort of touching the minds and hearts of people and consumers out there, because then we compete with all the brands in the world, and we need to play in the same sort of ballpark as every other brand are doing. We have really small budgets as well when we do things, and large markets. So that's also something that sort of is part of the strategy. We need to do something where we can get earned media, get sort of some sort of fame out of the marketing we are doing. So one of the campaigns that we launched 4 years ago now, which is still, I still do interviews about, this Discover the Originals. And it was something that we found out. It was also sort of during the pandemic, we planned this campaign. It was sort of the end in the pandemic in most countries. We called Discover the Originals, and we looked at a lot of how can we sort of set the scene for what Sweden is and tell something about it with something that people already sort of relate to, and it was the products from IKEA. And that's been around in the Ellen Show and Jimmy Fallon, etc. What does these weird sounding product names actually stand for? And it's the same in UK, France, and Germany as well. So we said, let's talk about Discover the Originals and reclaim the name, because all the names, or most of the names, are places in Sweden that IKEA has stolen from Sweden. So we reclaimed them and brought them back to its rightful owner, and also explained that it's actually fantastic places to visit. So the one that we sort of put in front of it is Bollman, which in the product catalog of IKEA is a quite cheap plastic toilet brush, but it's actually a fantastic lake and small, and not so far from where Ingrid Kamprad was born and raised and founded IKEA. Fantastic lake, fresh water, delivers fresh water to the south of Sweden. A lot of freshwater fishes, etc. Perfect for daily excursions with boat and fishing, swimming, etc. So it's quite fun. So we built on that, and also talk to the municipalities. It's owned by 4 municipalities and 2 regions, but also talk to them about changing their slogan to balm and more than an IKEA toilet brush, because it's actually much more than an IKEA toilet brush. So that was the basic of the story, and tell a lot about Sweden, everything from sort of the Swedish mindset, why is sort of the idea of IKEA so damn Swedish, and everything that you can do around Sweden, from north to south, east to west. So that's one campaign. Then we have something else. It was Spellbound by Sweden, which is an audio story, a horror story, written by bespoke short story written by John Ajvide Lindqvist, and he's one of the most famous Swedish horror author. I think Stephen King has said that this is the only other horror author that is worth reading. He has written the most famous work is Let the Right One In. So we wanted to go back. There's been a lot of talk about in tourism something called dark tourism, but also a lot about in every sort of big blockbuster series or movies the last decade has been a lot about different fantasy creatures that actually was sort of their history is from Sweden, normally from the Nordics or from Sweden. So we wanted to tell that story in another way. It was to talk about the sort of the cultural history of Sweden. So we did that with that horror story. And of course, it takes place in the woods because a lot of people has sort of been brought up in nature. So it's in nature, but very different from. It's very much horror, and was geofenced to Sweden, so you could only listen to it when you were in Sweden in the beginning. So you should put on your sort of headphones and go out in the Swedish woods and Swedish nature and listen to it, because it sort of augments all the story itself. So there are 2 different works that has gone really well, and I think also, as we said, together with the agency, can you sort of attract people by scaring them away, and that was something that we worked with. But to tell that story, and we've done some brand tracking studies on it, and it went really well because people became more and more